Tonight on the Local Live, see if the state is holding money for you. The school district will not establish a charitable fund at this time. This year's tiki invasion drew a crowd at Mamaroneck Beach. Tonight's roundtable will discuss net neutrality. Good evening, it's Thursday, July 26th. I'm Maura Carlin. Welcome to the Local Live. Is New York State holding some of your money? Westchester County residents have more than $272 million in unclaimed funds held by the state. Now, sources of the money include dormant bank accounts, insurance policies, and unclaimed security deposits.
What is the most fun part of my job? Some things aren't fun, but I love doing all of it. But the most fun part is returning people's lost money. County executive referred to it as free money, which is true. There's no charge or fee for claiming this money. And that's a very important point, because sometimes you will get a phone call or a letter from what is really a business, and sometimes people think it's from our office, saying, you have unclaimed funds, we will get that money for you for a fee, and they could charge actually up to 15%. And the reality is, while it's legal, if you ever get a call or a letter like that, you should come right to the control's office, because in fact, there is no charge, there is no fee to process your application to get this money returned to you. It is your.
To see if the state has money for you, visit www.osc.state.ny.us. In a letter this week, the Mamaroneck School District announced it will not establish a charitable fund at this time due to the State Department of Taxation and Finance regulations. The department released the acknowledgement form for charitable funds, which contained the words, quote, "No goods or services were provided in exchange for this donation," end quote. The school district consulted with its legal counsel, and the opinion is that the IRS will not treat contributions to a charitable fund as charitable contributions for federal income tax purposes. The charitable fund could have offered district taxpayers a reduction on tax liability of up to 95% of the donated amount. The popular Harbor Island International Beer Festival has been canceled this year. Mamaroneck Village Mayor Tom Murphy explained why at last week's board meeting.
Having talked to the folks who run this, due to time constraints and questions with the terms of the agreement, they are going to not run the beer festival in Harbor Island Park this year, and we will have discussions with them next year about running the beer festival in Harbor Island Park. What this does do, it allows our citizens full use of the park, and sports arrangements will not have to be canceled, and the kids can use all the fields in Harbor Island Park. So we are going to take that off the agenda.
And just hopefully the discussions will be earlier next year.
Yes.
So that
Right.
and the rec committee will be looped in.
Halftime says it's taking time to focus on its microbrewery collaboration with Decadent Ales and to plan for a better beer fest in 2019.
Did you know you could watch LMC TV anywhere? Yes, even there. Go to lmctv.org and scroll down the main page. Choose your channel and click Watch Now, then press play. You can watch whatever's live on our channel wherever you are. Want to watch a specific show on demand? Go to Videos, click on Category, or Shows to list by title, or by keyword in the search bar at the top right of the page. It's all a click away at lmctv.org.
Welcome to the Roundtable. We've heard a lot about net neutrality. The Bush and Obama administrations were for it. Trump, not so much. The FCC voted on party lines against it. The Senate voted to protect it, and the House didn't. Some states are trying to protect net neutrality, and it's frankly all just very confusing. And do we really understand the issue and where it stands? Well, you and I may not, but tonight's guest does, and she's going to explain it to us. Remember, if you have questions or comments, join our conversation, and contact information's on your screen. So my guest is Jeannie Zaino, a senior advisor at AT Research Solutions Applied Techonomics, Inc., and a professor of political science and international studies at Iona College. Did I say that right? Techonomics?
Perfectly.
Okay. Jeannie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to start with the very basic question. What is net neutrality?
And it's such an important question because we hear the term so much. So this was a term that was invented by a professor way back in 2003. And what it's known as, it's really known as the First Amendment of the Internet. And the idea with net neutrality is if you've ever, as we all have, tried to get on the internet, tried to get on a specific website, and it's very, very slow and it's not coming up, the idea with net neutrality is that if you don't have net neutrality, that is something that could happen more often. Because net neutrality is the idea that carrier services like Verizon or Comcast or AT&T have to treat all data equally. If you go to a website or I go to a website, that data should come to us and be delivered to us equally. In other words, they can't slow down certain data from certain websites because the website isn't paying for it or you and I aren't paying for it. And by the same token, they can't favor certain data because somebody with a lot of money is willing to pay more to get to you faster. And so that's really the idea of net neutrality. It's the government stepping in. It is a form of government regulation and saying to these service providers that all data has to be treated equally. So just to give you an example, I obviously am a professor at Iona College, and we sometimes assign to our students readings and material online that aren't the most exciting or interesting material you've ever thought of. You know, it's not something that's really going to get them excited. So it's not something that's heavily trafficked. And the idea would be, if there's not net neutrality, that the carriers could slow that material down unless the website was willing and able to pay more to move it up. So that's the idea with net neutrality. It protects all of us from having these carrier services decide who's going to get the data and who's not.
So why are people against it?
So people are against it because number one, it is a form of government regulation. So you have many people, particularly Republicans, particularly conservatives, who feel that the government should not step in to this, that this is a form of government regulation. It's government overreach. And the chairman of the FCC, Ajit Pai, has said it also stifles innovation. So they want a free and open internet in which you will have what we have for more conservative folks in the economy, where you have free from government regulation, that we as consumers and businesses decide what we want to see and what we want to view. So that's really the main reason that people are against it, that it's too much government regulation. And the reason we've seen them, as you mentioned, pull back on it, and it was voted on by the FCC to get rid of net neutrality in 2017, and it just went into effect last month, June 11th, is because this is part of the deregulation effort of the Trump administration. They've deregulated across the board in many areas, from the environment all the way to the internet. And this is the one that hit the internet, which is no more net neutrality. It's going to be free and open now.
So this is something that the carriers like a Verizon, AT&T, Comcast?
Exactly. This is something they like because it takes the government's hand out of it. So the fear of many people is that they can do what I talked about. They could throttle, what they call throttle, which is slow down certain websites, or they could favor certain material. So say you are a X carrier. I am Genie Carrier, and I own something like a Genie Flix, which is like Netflix. And as opposed to letting you as a consumer get Netflix, I push my Genie Flix faster to you, and so you start watching that as opposed to going to somewhere else. So that would be me favoring my material or me slowing down material unless you could pay for it faster. And I don't know if you caught this, but Burger King last year did a commercial on this, Burger King of all places, to try to explain to people what Netflix was. They
Net neutrality.
Net neutrality, sorry, net neutrality is they put out this commercial that went viral, which was basically seeing people going and ordering hamburgers, and unless you were willing to pay more for your hamburger, you sat there and waited, and people who came after you got their hamburgers because they were willing to pay more. But if you weren't, you waited on the side. And that went viral because they were trying to explain this is what it means if we don't have net neutrality.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about whether this is a way to control content or to control what we see or watch. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Did you know that if you missed the last government meeting, you can watch it on our website? Just go to lmctv.org, click on videos, then click on municipal meetings, scroll down to find the meeting you want, or use the search function in the upper right corner and type in the name or date of the meeting. Then watch. You can see the full agenda and jump to a specific agenda item. It's all a click away at lmctv.org.
Welcome back. We're talking to Jeannie Zaino about net neutrality, and I want to go into one of the concerns that you hear is that someone's going to try to control the content, what we can see, or push us to see what they want us to see. Is that a valid fear?
It is a fear. Now, one of the ideas would be that these carrier services stop you from watching certain things. Most people feel that's a little bit far-fetched, that they probably wouldn't be that you're looking at a website and you get a big stop sign on it or it just doesn't come up.
But is there anything to prevent it?
There's nothing to prevent it, though, and I'm so glad you said that because that's the problem. Because there's nobody who can say to the carrier, you must do this, because the government has backed out, at least at the federal level. The fear that we hear more about is the idea they're going to slow down certain material or speed up their own material. And so they would be, to your point, controlling what we see because they now control access. And again, the government isn't stepping in to regulate that. They can do that if they want. Now, one thing we should say about the new regulation just started in June is if they do that, they have to say they're doing it. So it's not that they can just throttle or push material forward. They have to reveal that they're doing that. Now, whether you and I would know, how many of us sit there and look at these things, would we know they're doing it or not? We could find out because they'd have to reveal it at least to the government. But nobody could stop them.
What about areas where you don't have a choice of carrier? In an area like we're in now, you can choose to go somewhere else for the moment. But what if you're in some place that you don't have an option?
And that's absolutely a concern because you don't have an option. You are at the mercy of what the carrier that you are stuck with it decides to do. And so it gets rid of this free and open access that many people feel was really what made the internet what it is, this kind of open platform where everything was equal and free and accessible.
We have a question from a viewer. Does the removal of net neutrality limit my access to unbiased information?
It can, and this is the really difficult thing. So it just took effect June 11th, so we still don't quite know how it's going to pan out. But it can limit access to all kinds of information if the carriers choose to limit it. And I think most people feel that the carriers would make their decisions based on monetary interests. But to the viewer's point, what if they decided to make that decision based on political interests or ideological interests? Right. There's no one to stop them. And let's not forget what is likely to happen in this environment is you will have a few carriers, we've mentioned Comcast, Verizon, AT&T, big carriers that will control our access to information. And the little guy, quote unquote, won't be able to survive in this environment. So alternative points of view may not be as easily accessible because these big companies are going to want to play to the lowest common denominator, what's the most popular, as opposed to allowing a wide variety of voices.
I think I got that.
Did you? Okay, I can say it again.
I think I got that. Some other concerns that have been expressed have to do with freedom of speech, which partially relates to that, but it isn't completely that. And another is possible that it's a racial justice issue. Can you explain what that concern is?
Yeah, I think both of these are concerns that if you have a few big companies or big corporations or big service providers controlling information, alternative, unpopular points of view will be stifled, even if they're just stifled by the market. So we just mentioned potentially these companies having an ideological or political reason for stifling things, and that is possible. We don't have evidence of it happening as far as I know, but it's certainly possible. The other part of that is that we in the market can stifle alternative points of view. So if you just imagine, a case like the drumbeat to go to war following 9/11, that was something that was incredibly popular at the time. A few people voiced concern that maybe we shouldn't go to war, and that's now become the more popular view now. Well, if this goes into effect, the fear is that those kinds of unpopular ideas that may be important for us to all hear about may not get out into the market because they won't be popular enough, and the people who have them won't have the funding enough to pay to get them out there.
Okay, related to that, another issue that's been raised is that it affects innovation and the ability for smaller companies to succeed, which is kind of the opposite of what the FCC chair was saying.
Yeah.
Which is right?
This argument we hear on both sides. On the one hand, Pai said it needs to be open, government needs to step out, too much regulation, the idea costs money to companies and it stifles innovation. On the other side, there is this fear that unless you have money, we wouldn't have something like a YouTube or something like a Netflix. And the reason here is that you have to start these companies from somewhere. They have to start by, innovative young entrepreneurs who may not have big funding, but who have a great idea, who put it out there, and then we all look at it and we enjoy using it and we start to use it and they slowly or quickly gain traction. The fear is that if something isn't immediately popular or well-funded, it's not going to get out there. So the little guy, quote unquote, or gal, is going to be stifled, and that's going to stifle innovation. And so there's a lot of fear. All these things, like I mentioned, Netflix and YouTube, that have become popular on the internet, wouldn't have the chance to grow in this environment. And that, I think, is really an important debate that we hear from both sides, and I'm so glad you pointed it out, because there's a lot of concern about innovation in this tech environment.
Right.
And what is, where do you draw the line between too much government regulation and too little regulation? And, I personally think there is a line to be drawn. I think too much can be, any small business owner knows, can be difficult to deal with, but also the government does need to even the playing field so that everybody has an opportunity to jump on and we don't have monopolies out there. And I think that's the big concern.
We're going to take another quick break. We will be right back to continue our discussion on net neutrality. Stay with us.
Did you know if you need equipment, you can book it online? At lmctv.org, go to Services and click on Forms. Click on Equipment Request Form, fill out the information and equipment you need, and submit. Not sure which equipment you need? Equipment Rentals in the service bar will show you exactly what we have. You can always email us with questions. It's all a click away at lmctv.org.
And if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Jeannie Zaino about net neutrality. We have a question from another viewer. Does zero rating help the customer? I'm not sure I understand what that means, but I assume that you do.
Does zero rating help the customer? I think it potentially can.
Why don't you tell us what zero rating is first?
Well, so if I'm understanding the question, and this is if they're talking about the ratings in terms of how the internet is rated, I think it does. But I don't think we know quite yet. And so I would need to just talk to the viewer to see if I'm getting exactly what the rating is.
Okay. So we're talking about this with regard to the internet. But How does cellular data play into that? Because cellular data takes, it takes you onto the internet. Is this a related issue for those carriers, or is this purely, when we're logging it, on computers?
No, it's actually both. So there's the service providers, and there's also the mobile issue. And so both of those are affected. That those who take you, a lot of people talk about the metaphor of this being like a road and
a highway,
a highway,
right.
and a truck delivering a package to your house. It's got to go down the truck, it's got to go down the highway rather than it's got to go off the exit, and it's got to go to your neighborhood. And so that's really where you do see the cellular aspect come into play on this. And so there is an impact in all of these areas in terms of what kind of information ultimately we're going to get. And I think it's important, something that you raised earlier, which is that we're talking about the federal government stepping back from regulation in terms of away from net neutrality, but the state governments have tried to pick up the slack, so to speak. So we saw a bill passed in California that reinstitutes net neutrality.
And is that valid? Does it have the power to do that despite what the federal government is saying?
It can. It's obviously not as effective because it is just statewide, but of course, very similar to the passage of different regulations for, say, Facebook in Europe has an impact in the United States because Facebook's not going to do one thing for Europe and one thing for the US. We may see that trickle across the border, and I think that's part of the hope. And of course, other states, including our very own state of New York, also have bills pending, and Governor Cuomo did pass an executive order. Now, they're not as effective as having the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, as they did in 2015, step in and do this nationwide, but it is something we're seeing at the state level. So people who care about this issue, as we have an election coming up in November, can vote at the federal level or the state level and keep this issue in mind and ask their representatives and senators at the state and local level where they are on this issue.
So what do you see happening in the future?
Well,
in the fall?
I think it depends in part on what happens in the fall. You mentioned
You think the elections are really going to make a difference on this?
They could. If the Democrats take the House of Representatives, and they very well could in the fall, and they are able to get the Senate to pass it again, and they are able to get the House to pass it under the Democrats, which I think they would, whether the president signs it or not is another question, but we could see some movement there. And of course, if they can override a veto of the president, they could get beyond a veto if he chose to do that. But so that's an important point. I think also, obviously, as you look at the state elections, we can have some movement there. And then also, obviously, as you look to 2020, I mean, the real answer to this is either having Congress pass and the president sign a bill, or having a new FCC chairman and FCC members that are, if you support net neutrality, are Democrats that will vote to reinstate net neutrality. But one real concern I have stepping back from this is that this changeover in administrations leading to these kinds of drastic changes in this kind of regulation is also not good for everybody. Right. So we had it instituted under Obama. We've had it pulled back under Trump. Who knows what's going to happen in November or January when a new Congress comes in? And then, of course, 2020. It would be much better for both the companies and consumers if we had some consistency in regulation here, which is why many people say that maybe shouldn't be in the hands of the FCC, but it should be in the hands maybe of Congress, and Congress could pass a bill that's harder than to pull back.
Why is it so political? Is it just, those who believe in regulation versus deregulation, or is there something else going on?
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, it is part and parcel of this deregulation effort by the Trump administration that many conservatives and Republicans, favor, and Democrats, they don't oppose deregulation, but they want it to be more mild. So I think there is that. I think there is also a divide amongst Democrats and Republicans when it comes to this issue of access to information and speech that we see referred to historically, and I think that's part and parcel of this debate. How much should the government be stepping in to regulate speech? And this comes up in this arena over and over again. And let's also not forget, for many people, 2016, such a recent election, and so much, talk about what happened on the internet and the impact it had on our vote in 2016 also plays into this. had the government had more of a hand in what was going on in, say, Facebook, for instance, and not to pick on them because they're going through a hard time right now, but Facebook, would we have seen a different result, or at least in terms of the first question that came about unbiased information, would that have been more prevalent? So I think all of those things make this a very political issue, if you will. And of course, let's not forget, Democrats tend to, want a little bit more regulation in this arena, Republicans not so much, and that plays into this hand as well.
We're out of time.
Already?
I know, it goes very quickly.
Fast.
Thank you so much, Ginny
you.
Zaino, for joining us, and hopefully we all understand net neutrality a little bit better. And you stay tuned for more of The Local Live.
I'm a reporter, I'm a producer, I'm a writer.
I am a news anchor. I am a producer.
I am a news editor.
I am the technical director.
I am a reporter. I am an anchor.
I volunteer for The Local Live because I'm a proud resident of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, and I like to give back to the community.
I volunteer for The Local Live because I believe in bringing the news into your living room.
I volunteer for The Local Live because I believe in leadership, support, and success in a community.
I volunteer at The Local Live because it's a fun learning experience, and I know each week I come, I can learn something new.
I volunteer for The Local Live because I believe in community television.
As a spring intern at The Local Live, I learned new skills like video, editing, and production, and furthered my skills as a writer. The internship gave me confidence as I embarked on my journey through the world of journalism.
We are The Local Live.
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 Mamaroneck Village and LMC TV hosted the 3rd annual Tiki Invasion, Friday, July 20th at Harbor Island. Here are some of the highlights.
Tiki party here at Harbor Island on the beach. Beautiful, the sun is out. We're gonna have a great time. LMC TV and Rec Department sponsoring this amazing event.
Yes, and we want to thank the Village of Mamaroneck and also the Parks Department for doing a wonderful job keeping our beaches clean and beautiful. So thank you, Village of Mamaroneck. And thanks everybody for showing up tonight. It's gonna be a great event.
Aloha.
Aloha.
So it's the 3rd time LMC TV has partnered with the Rec Department for this event. Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Oh wow, let's do it for another 3 decades, right? Let's do this.
It's very nice. They have a bunch of snacks and games and the movie, and they had a magician, so yeah.
This is the best partnership I've seen in a really long time, and I think it's mutual. I think the families had a lot of fun today, and these movies are just awesome. So it's just such a great partnership, and let's just keep doing it. Let's keep enjoying the beach in the summer. You know, great movies in the sand. I don't really know anybody else that does it in the sand, so I think that's kind of cool. You know.
How about everyone else? Did you guys have fun?
Yeah!
We love the Local Live!
Yes, we love the Local Live. Thank you, LMC TV.
On April 20th, LMC TV launched a fundraising community mural. You can see we are about halfway there. We'd like to thank those who've donated so far and see how you can help.
TV would like to thank local artist Jamie Lynn at Made, an art studio in Mamaroneck, for creating a beautiful community mural. Place your piece in this mural by contributing to LMC TV, the community connection that brings you local board meetings, varsity sports, and your local news. Please contribute to this community mural by going to our website and clicking on Donate. Each contributor will be listed next to the mural when it is complete. We value your appreciation of what we do. Become a single donor or as a group, go to lmctv.org. The only piece missing is you.
A new Wednesday farmers market opened July 11th in Larchmont's Kane Park.
Finally here, and what better way to spend your time than at a farmer's market? I'm Ral Kathwari, and I'm here at Kane Park at the opening of the Larchmont Sound Shore Farmers Market. Mark your calendars. Every Wednesday, you can now take part in a fitness class, enjoy the music, and shop local at this Larchmont market. From the handmade chocolate, artisanal oils, to sustainable seafood and more, there's something healthy for everyone to enjoy. Lorraine, so this is the opening of the Sound Shore Market. How do you feel today?
I'm very thrilled to be here today, and this is a great location for it. Here on the Post Road, people driving by, they see the market, they pull over, they come in and buy some things. And it also introduces people to the village of Larchmont as a place to come shop, to eat, to find whatever it is that they might need on any given day.
I'm here with Lisa today with Lux Chocolat. Lisa, could you tell me about your amazing chocolate today?
Oh, well, thank you very much. We actually handcraft all of our chocolate. We're all dark chocolate, and I really like the whole local aspect of everything that we do. We use fresh local milk, cream, butter, honey, fruits, veg, herbs, cheese, and even locally distilled spirits in our creations.
Yes, we have a sustainable seafood shop. We're from Hudson Valley Seafood. Today I have a Scottish salmon, I have a wild-caught sockeye salmon, I have cod. We get fish from all over the place. As long as it's sustainably caught, we'll get it.
How long is this farmers market running until?
Yeah, so this is our grand opening today, April 11th, and then it runs every Wednesday, 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. through Halloween. Halloween is the last day.
So if you're looking for locally produced artisan products, you can come by to the Sound Shore Market in Kane Park in Larchmont from 2 to 7 every Wednesday. For the Local Live, I'm Ral Kathwari.
Jupiter Joe and the STEM Alliance of Larchmont and Mamaroneck will be hosting a free astronomy night at Harbor Island on Friday, July 27th from 8 to 11 p.m. with the rain date Saturday, July 28th. Learn more about the planets while taking an up-close look at Venus, Jupiter, Mars, and more. Visit the Eventbrite link. You can see it on your screen for more information and to reserve your spot. LMC TV's Executive Director, Matt Sullivan, attended the Alliance for Community Media annual conference earlier this month. He picked up an award from the organization for the Best Access Program promo. The video featured our reporter, Lindsley Barrios, and was produced by our former senior producer, Shayla Navarro, so congrats to them. And Sullivan's trip also included an important stop in Washington, D.C.
Well, hello, people. Mr. Sullivan reporting from Washington. Well, it was an excellent day in our nation's capital. We had several meetings with the offices of Senators Schumer and Gillibrand, as well as Congressman Elliot Engel. All positive things concerning the future of public access television and just how important it is to keep our democracy flowing and well informed. So we want to thank Well, it's been a fun day in D.C. We had a lot of great meetings, and hopefully we're keeping community media alive and well here in Washington, D.C. For the Local Live, I'm Matt Sullivan, signing off.
And we love hearing from our viewers. Email comments and inquiries to thelocallive@lmctv.org. Thanks for watching The Local Live. I'm Maura Carlin, and we'll see you next week. Good night.